Naranam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudire nashtiprayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhakti sevaya bhagavati uttam shloke bhaktir bhavati naistiki. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 28, text number 52 onwards. So yesterday we saw how Maladhvaj left his body, and then Weatherby, his wife, was lamenting next to his dead body, and she cremated the body of her husband, and then a Brahman showed up. And the Brahman was, allegorically, it was a Paramatma, super soul. Text 52. Brahman uvacha katvam kasyasi ko vayam shayano yasya shochasi janasi kim sakhayam mam yenagre vichachartaha. The Brahman inquired as follows: Who are you? Whose wife or daughter are you? Who is the man lying here? It appears you are lamenting for this dead body. Don't you recognize me? I am your eternal friend. You may remember that many times in the past you have consulted me. When a person's relative dies, renunciation is automatically visible. Consultation with the super soul seated within everyone's heart is possible only when one is completely free from the contamination of material attachment. One who is sincere and pure gets an opportunity to consult with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his Paramatma feature, sitting within everyone's heart. The Paramatma is always the Chaitya Guru, the spiritual master within, and he comes before one externally as the instructor and initiator, spiritual master. The Lord can reside within the heart, and he can also come out before a person and give him instructions. Thus, the spiritual master is non-different from the super soul sitting within the heart. An uncontaminated soul or living entity can get a chance to meet the Paramatma face to face, just as one gets a chance to consult with the Paramatma within his heart. One also gets a chance to see him actually situated before him. Then one can take instructions from the super soul directly. This is a duty of the pure devotee, to see the bona fide spiritual master and consult with the super soul within the heart. So spiritual master, as Prabhupada says, is a representative of the super soul also. Super soul guides from within and spiritual master guides from outside. And this is what Prabhupada says, this is a duty of the pure devotee, to see the bona fide spiritual master and consult with the super soul within the heart. When the Brahman asked the woman who the man lying on the floor was, she answered that he was her spiritual master and that she was perplexed about what to do in his absence. At such a time, the super soul immediately appears, provided the devotee is purified in the heart by following the directions of the spiritual master. A sincere devotee who follows the instructions of the spiritual master certainly gets direct instructions from his heart, from the super soul. Thus, a sincere devotee is always helped directly or indirectly by the spiritual master and the super soul. This is confirmed in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lata Beach. If the devotee serves his spiritual master sincerely, Krishna automatically becomes pleased. Yasya Prasada Bhagavad Prasada. By satisfying the spiritual master, one automatically satisfies Krishna. Thus, the devotee becomes enriched by both the spiritual master and Krishna. The super soul is eternally the friend of the living entity and always remains with him. The super soul has already been has been ready to help the living entity even before the creation of this material world. It is therefore stated here, Yanagre Vicharatha. The word agre means before the creation. Thus, the super soul has been accompanying the living entity since before the creation. or he has been accompanying him, creation after creation, after creation, species of life after that, after that. But the point is, the one who is surrendered to the spiritual master or following the instructions of the spiritual master, then the super soul also helps him by giving him instructions or guidance or directions. So it's a very sublime and subtle process. People say, "Oh, I don't. Who can see Paramatma within the heart? Nobody can see Paramatma." Well, well, if a devotee is purified, that's what Prabhupada is saying here. If like she was purified, Super Soul came right in front of her. So all we have to do is purify our consciousness by following the instructions of Srila Prabhupada. And then nothing can be lacking. Api smarsi chatmanam avigyat sakham sakhe hitva mam padam anvichan homam bhogarato gataha. The Brahman continued, "My dear friend, even though you cannot immediately recognize me, can't you remember that in the past you had a very intimate friend? Unfortunately, you gave up my company and accepted a position as enjoyer of this material world." As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Ocean of Bharat Arjun, a conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, overcome by the dualities of desire and hate. This is an explanation of how the living entity falls down into this material world. In the spiritual world, there is no duality, nor is there hate. The Supreme Personality of Godhead expands himself into many. In order to enjoy bliss more and more, the Supreme Lord expands himself in different categories. As mentioned in the Varaha Purana, he expands himself in Vishnu Tattva, the Svansha expansion, and his marginal potency, the Vibhinansha or the living entity. These expanded living entities are innumerable, just as the minute molecules of sunshine are innumerable expansions of the sun. The Vibhinansha expansions, the marginal potencies of the Lord, are the living entities. When the living entities desire to enjoy themselves, they develop a consciousness of duality and come to hate the service of the Lord. In this way, the living entities fall into the material world. So in the spiritual world, there is no duality. Duality in the sense, first duality is, I am this body, I'm not a spirit soul. And then the dualities of desire and hate, heat and cold, man upon, so many things. But that's all related to the body. There is no duality in the spiritual world. Means there is no desire and hate over there. It's all service of the Lord. So when the living entity, he develops this envious desire, then he falls down into the material world. Then it is called as Vibhin Ansha, because we are still going to be Ansha of Krishna. We cannot, this is our constitutional position, that cannot change. But then we want to enjoy ourselves. We have the desire to enjoy ourselves. And whatever we don't like, we hate it. And the thing that we really hate the most is service of Krishna. Because by accepting ourselves as servant of Krishna, by getting into the service of Krishna, we are acknowledging that we are not the enjoyer of the material world. And not too many people want to do that. So here we are trying to enjoy. We cannot enjoy, but we don't want to serve either. So that is a problem. But the Prabhupada says the natural position of the living entity is to serve the Lord in a transcendental loving attitude. When the living entity wants to become Krishna himself or imitate Krishna, he falls down into the material world. Since Krishna is the Supreme Father, his affection for the living entity is eternal. When the living entity falls down into the material world, Supreme Lord, through his Swansha expansion, Paramatma, keeps company with the living entity. In this way, the living entity may someday return home back to Godhead. By misusing his independence, the living entity falls down from the service of the Lord and takes a position in this material world as an enjoyer. That is to say, the living entity takes his position within the material body. Wanting to take a very exalted position, the living entity instead becomes entangled in a repetition of birth and death. He selects his position as a human being, a demigod, a cat, dog, tree, etc. In this way, the living entity selects a body out of 8,400,000 forms and tries to satisfy himself by a variety of material enjoyment. The Supersoul, however, does not like him to do so. Consequently, the Supersoul instructs him to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord then takes charge of the living entity, but unless the living entity is uncontaminated by material desires, he cannot surrender to the Supreme Lord. So to come to the level of full surrender, it takes time. So slowly, either by force, by Krishna frustrating us in fulfilling our material desires, or by developing love for Krishna, love for service of Krishna, we start giving up material desires. Unknowingly, we just don't like to do, we just don't want to do anything like that. So then we start making progress towards Krishna. The Supreme Lord is the Supreme Friend of everyone. However, no one can take advantage of the Supreme Friend's instructions while making his own plans to become happy and entangling himself in the modes of material nature. When there is creation, the Lord living entities take on different forms according to past desires. This means that all the species of forms of life are simultaneously created. Darwin's theory stating that no human being existed from the beginning, but that humans evolved after many, many years is simply a nonsensical theory. From Vedic literature, we find that the first creature within the universe is Lord Brahma. Being the most intelligent personality, Lord Brahma could take charge of creating all the variety found within this material world. So all the species has been there, 8,400,000. Scientists don't even know this number. That many species exist in the whole universe, actually. They don't even know everything on Earth, what to speak of the whole universe. So the living entities and all the species has been there since the beginning of the creation. That's how the soul moves around in different bodies. But what's the purpose? We think I can enjoy in that body better than I enjoy in this body. So that's why we take the form of dog or cat or hog or whatever. We think we can enjoy in that body. Hansavaham chatvam charya sakhayo manasayano abhutamantara voka sahasra parivatsaran. My dear gentle friend, both you and I are exactly like two swans. We live together in the same heart, which is just like the Manas lake. Although we have been living together for many hundreds, thousands of years, we are still far away from our original home. The original home of the living entity and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is a spiritual world. In the spiritual world, both the Lord and the living entities live together very peacefully. Since the living entity remains engaged in the service of the Lord, they both share a blissful life in the spiritual world. However, when the living entity wants to enjoy himself, he falls down into the material world. Even while he is in that position, the Lord remains with him as a super soul, his intimate friend. Because of his forgetfulness, the living entity does not know that the Supreme Lord is accompanying him as a super soul. In this way, the living entity remains conditioned in each and every millennium. Although the Lord follows him as a friend, the living entity, because of forgetful material existence, does not recognize him. So this is our problem. And another problem is even after studying all this, learning all this, we still forget the super soul is sitting right next to us in the heart. And not just sitting, he's witnessing everything that we do, that we think, that we speak, everything. All the crimes and all the bad things will stop in the material world if we just realize this. He's sitting right there and he's watching everything. He's witnessing everything. And when our time comes, we'll get the reaction. But our problem is that we think when I'm doing something good, then he's watching so that he can give me some good reaction. But when I'm doing something bad, then nobody's watching. No, he's still watching. He's still witnessing everything. He's sanctioning because this is our desire. But he's witnessing. And Chitragupta is writing everything. For everybody, every living entity, him and his team, they're writing everything. They're noting down everything. Sattvam vihaya mam bandho gato grame matirmahim vicharan padam drakshi kayachin nirmitam striya. My dear friend, you are now my very same friend. Since you left me, you have become more and more materialistic and not seeing me. You have been traveling in different forms throughout this material world, which was created by some woman. When the living entity falls down, he goes into the material world, which was created by the external energy of the Lord. This external energy is described herein as some woman or Prakriti. This material world is composed of material elements, ingredients supplied by the Mahatattva, the total material energy. The material world created by this external energy becomes a so-called home of the conditioned soul. Within this material world, the conditioned soul accepts different apartments or different bodily forms and then travels about. Sometimes it travels in the higher planetary systems and sometimes in the lower planetary systems. Sometimes it travels in higher species of life and sometimes in lower species. He has been wandering within this material universe since time immemorial. So the living entity wanders into many species of life, but he's fortunate when he once again meet his friend, either in person or through his representative. So this is the super soul of Brahman is telling Vedarbi. And this Vedarbi was Puranjan, the previous life. Actually, it is Krishna who personally advises all living entities to return home. No, I'm sorry, it's Vedarbi's daughter he has married, Maladhvaj married to, yeah. But anyway, this is a story of every soul just moving around in different bodies. Actually, it's Krishna who personally advises all living entities to return home back to Godhead. Sometimes Krishna sends his representative who, delivering Krishna's very message, canvasses all living entities to return home back to Godhead. Unfortunately, the living entity is so greatly attached to material enjoyment that they does not take the instructions of Krishna or his representative very seriously. This material tendency is mentioned in this verse as grame mati. The word Mahim means within this material world. All living entities within this material world are sensually inclined. Consequently, they become entangled in different types of bodies and suffer the pangs of material existence. So this is what Krishna wants us to not to go through all these sufferings and come back to the spiritual world and enjoy eternally, unlimitedly. But look at our position, look at our condition. We all are suffering here, one way or the other. And with this coronavirus, everybody is suffering all over the world. But still, how many people are seriously practicing? Okay, Krishna, enough is enough. I don't want to suffer anymore. I want to come back. And this is what, look at the picture behind me. He's driving a scooter or bicycle, and Krishna is sitting behind him and saying, okay, let's go together. Let's go back, come back to God. Pancharamam Navadwaram Ekapalam Trikoshtakam Shatkulam Pancha Vipanam Pancha Prakriti Sridhavam. In that city, the material body, there are 5 gardens, 9 gates, 1 protector, 3 apartments, 6 families, 5 stores, 5 material elements, and 1 woman who's the lord of the house. Again, another allegory going on. Panchendriyartha arama dvara prana nava prabhu tejo abannani kosthani kulam indriya sangraha. My dear friend, the 5 gardens are the 5 objects of sense enjoyment, and the protector is the life air, which passes through the 9 gates. The 3 apartments are the chief ingredients, fire, water, and earth. The 6 families are the aggregate total of the mind and 5 senses. The 5 senses that acquire knowledge are sight, taste, smell, touch, sound, and touch. And these act through the 9 gates, the 2 eyes, the 2 ears, 1 mouth, 2 nostrils, 1 genital, and 1 rectum. These holes are compared to the gardens in the walls of the city. The principal ingredients are earth, water, and fire. And the principal actor is mind, which is controlled by the intelligence, buddhi. Vipanastu kriya shaktir bhuta praktir avyaya shaktyatriyadhishah pumas tatra pravishtu nava buddhate. The 5 stores are the 5 working sensory organs. They transact their business through the combined forces of 5 elements, which are eternal. Behind all this activity is a soul. The soul is a person and an enjoyer in reality. However, because he is now hidden within the city of the body, he is devoid of knowledge. Means his consciousness is completely covered up. The living entity enters the material creation with the aid of the 5 elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether, and thus his body is formed. Although the living entity is working from within, he is nonetheless unknown. The living entity enters the material creation, but because he is bewildered by the material energy, he appears to be hidden. The bodily conception of life is prominent because of ignorance. Navabuddhite. Intelligence is described in the feminine gender, but owing to her prominence in all activities, she is described in this verse as Adhisha, the controller. The living entity lives by means of fire, water, and food grains. It is through the combination of these 3 that the body is maintained. Consequently, the body is called Prakriti, material creation. All the elements gradually combine to form flesh, bone, blood, and so on. All these appear as various apartments. It is said in the Vedas that the digested foods are ultimately divided into 3. The solid portion becomes a stool, and the semi-liquid portion turns into flesh. The liquid portion turns yellow and is again divided into three. One of these liquid portions is called urine. Similarly, the fiery portion is divided into three, and one is called bone. Out of the five elements, fire, water, and food grains are very important. These three are mentioned in previous verses. So this is how the bodies are maintained, bodies are created, and ingredients are the same, just the shape is different, and the color of the skin is little different, and the skin could be very soft or very hard, or there could be hairs on the skin, or there could be no hair on the skin, and this is all we all keep on fighting for. In fact, the animal's body is made of the same five ingredients. Our bodies are made of same five ingredients. Everybody is same five ingredients. Different permutations, combinations of those. That's all. But then we love some things and hate some things and like some things and don't like some things. This is how all the bodies are going on. And this Brahman or super soul will speak more about the construction of the body. And that's how he will end this chapter. Basically, these chapters, the story of Puranjan, is basically to make us get detached, completely detached from this material world. What are we fighting for? What are we spending most of our time, most of our energy for? Actually, nothing. It is nothing, actually. But looks so dear to us, looks so important, we just can't give up. Okay, anyway, I'll stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments? Okay, you all have a very safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhupada.